වීව එකතුණු උකුතේ එකක
රස උපරිමයි.
හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9, this Wednesday the 1st of February 2023. Friends in need. US Under-Secretary for Political Affairs Victoria Nuland says China must provide concrete debt assurances to IMF and announces donation of $30 million to Sri Lanka.
What China has offered so far is not enough. We need to see credible and specific assurances.
Not too long. President Ranil Wickremesinghe believes that Sri Lanka will be able to restructure the island's debt within the next 2 months. Positive outlook. 2023 for Sri Lanka will be good in terms of stability and reconciliation, says Foreign Minister Ali Sabri.
We will use this opportunity as a catalyst for realistic assessment of our challenges.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9 with Andrew Bernard. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Very good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. New top story for tonight, US Under-Secretary for Political Affairs Victoria Nuland, who arrived in Sri Lanka last night, urged China to step forward and provide Sri Lanka with credible debt restructuring assurances, saying that what they have offered is not enough. She went on to say that the United States and the Paris Club are taking steps to do what is necessary to help Sri Lanka with debt reassurances. Meanwhile, Nuland announced a donation of $30 million from the United States for school lunches to be provided for over 800 public schools island-wide.
US Under-Secretary for Political Affairs Victoria Nuland arrived in Sri Lanka last night, marking the 75th anniversary of US-Sri Lanka diplomatic relations. Under-Secretary Nuland's visit will highlight US support for Sri Lanka's ongoing reforms to foster economic prosperity, protect human rights and promote reconciliation. Upon arrival, Nuland met with President Ranil Wickremesinghe. During the meeting, she emphasized the support of the US government for ongoing recovery efforts in the country. During the discussions, President Wickremesinghe extended his appreciation for the support provided by the US government during these difficult times. Talks also focused on ongoing discussions with the International Monetary Fund, while the US pledged to continue to support the negotiations with the aim of swiftly resolving the issues. The President outlined the measures taken in this regard to the reconciliation talks with the minority parties in Sri Lanka, including the full implementation of the 13th Amendment. The discussions also focused on the ongoing efforts to combat the growing narcotics trade and the US extending their assistance. Later on, Under-Secretary Victoria Nuland met with Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri and other senior government officials, and later discussed steps Sri Lanka is taking to enact lasting structural changes that promote economic health, stability and long-term growth. In the meantime, she met with the ethnic minority opposition party leaders to discuss their hopes for reconciliation and a political solution to Sri Lanka's history of ethnic conflict. Following these engagements, Under-Secretary Nuland held a media briefing at the US Embassy today.
The U.S. will be contributing an additional $30 million to go towards school lunches for 96,000 students across Sri Lanka in 850 public schools. We are also beginning to see, including today, the delivery of 770 metric tons of fortified rice and vegetable oil to meet food security needs. And this is on top of more than $240 million in support that the United States has provided to Sri Lanka just over the last year. We want to see an IMF agreement as quickly as possible. That's what Sri Lanka deserves. That's what Sri Lanka needs. We, the United States, are prepared to do our part. Our Paris Club partners are prepared to do their part. India has made strong commitments that it will provide the credible assurances that the IMF is looking for. What China has offered so far is not enough. We need to see credible and specific assurances that they will meet the IMF standard of debt relief.
Now, President Ranil Wickremesinghe believes that the government will be able to restructure Sri Lanka's debt within the next 2 months. Addressing an awards ceremony in Kandy, President Wickremesinghe said that the country's economy needs to be built on economic freedom, adding that there is no point of political freedom without ensuring economic freedom.
An event to honour 77 military officers with the Vishishta Seva Vibhushana Medal was held in Kandy this evening under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
General L.H.S.C. Silva, NDC, PSc, MPhil. Lieutenant General H.L.V.M. Liyanage, RWP, RSP, NDU.
අපි විශේෂයෙන්ම 75 වෙනි නිදහස් උත්සවය සමරන්නේ මේ රටේ තවත් විශාල අර්බුදයක් තියෙන අවස්ථාවේදී. සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම අපේ ආර්ථිකය කඩාවැටලා තියෙනවා. ඒ ආර්ථිකය අපි ආපහු හදන්න නැත්නම් අපි මේ ණය උගුලෙන් බේරෙන්නේ නැත්නම් අපේ රටේ ආර්ථික නිදහස නැති වෙනවා. අපේ රටේ ආර්ථික නිදහස නැති වුණොත් දේශපාලන නිදහසෙන් කිසිම ප්‍රයෝජනයක් නැහැ. අද බොහෝ දෙනෙක් දුක් විඳිනවා. මම ඒක දන්නවා. සමහර රජයේ සේවකයන් ණය අරගෙන දැන් බදු ගෙවන්න ගියාම ආදායමත් ඇතුලේ නැති වෙලා ගිහින් තියෙනවා. මේ අපි හැම එක්කෙනාම ගෙනියන්න තියෙන බරක්. මේ බර විගහට අපි නැති කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ බර නැති කරන්න පුළුවන්. අද මාව හම්බෙන්න ඇමරිකාවේ වික්ටෝරියා නිව්ලන්ඩ් මැතිණියාව විශේෂයෙන්ම බයිඩන් ජනාධිපතිතුමාගේ පණිවිඩයක් එක්ක අපි කරන මේ ආර්ථික සංග්‍රාමයට සම්පූර්ණ සහයෝගය දෙනවා කියලා. මගේ විශ්වාසය තියෙනවා ඊළඟ මාස දෙක තුලදී මේ ණය ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කිරීම අපිට පුළුවන්. ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුදලත් ඉන්දියාවත් චීනය එක්කත් අන්තිම වටේ සාකච්ඡා කරගෙන යන්නේ. ඒ ප්‍රතිව්‍යුහගත කිරීමේ ඒකගත්වය අපි ලැබෙන්න ඕන. මම දන්නවා මේ අවුරුදු අවසන් වෙනකොට මීට වඩා හොඳ ආර්ථිකයක් තේ මේ රජයේ සේවය කරන සියලු දෙනාටම යම් කිසි සහනයක් දෙන්න අවස්ථාව ලැබෙනවා. ගිය යුද්ධෙත් මේ යුද්ධෙත් අතර එක වෙනසක් තියෙනවා. එදා ජීවිත නැති වුණා, අද ආදායම් නැති වෙනවා. නැති වුණ ජීවිත අපිට ආපහු ගෙනත් දෙන්න බෑ. අඩුනේ ආදායම අපිට ආපහු ඇති කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ නිසා ත්‍රිවිධ හමුදාවෙත් පොලිසියෙත් අපේ සාමාන්‍ය පුරවැසියන්ගේ මේ වැඩ කටයුත්ත කරන්නට මම සහයෝගය ඉල්ලනවා.
Now, the Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri says that 2023 is Sri Lanka's year for socio-economic stabilization, reconciliation and the recovery, adding that this year will be used as an opportunity for the realistic assessment of the country's challenges. Addressing the 42nd session of the Universal Periodic Review at the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva, the Sri Lankan Foreign Minister said that the government is determined to strengthen ethnic harmony and will set a stable foundation for a sound economic management and growth. During the session, the United Kingdom and the United States and Canada called on the Sri Lankan government to repeal the penal code provisions that decriminalize same-sex conduct and also the Prevention of Terrorism Act.
Sri Lanka's national report under the fourth cycle of the Universal Periodic Review was presented to the UN Working Group on UPR by Sri Lanka's permanent representative in Geneva, Himali Arunatilaka, during the 42nd session of the Universal Periodic Review at the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva today. Following the presentation of the report, Sri Lankan Minister of Foreign Affairs, President's Council Ali Sabri addressed the session virtually from Colombo. The interactive dialogue on Sri Lanka's national report under the fourth cycle of the Universal Periodic Review began following the statement of Sri Lankan Minister of Foreign Affairs.
We envisage 2023, the 75th anniversary of our independence, to be a year of socio-economic stabilization, reconciliation and recovery. We will use this opportunity as a catalyst for realistic assessment of our challenges. We are determined to strengthen the ethnic harmony and to set a stable foundation for sound economic management, recovery and future growth. We invite all Sri Lankans, including overseas Sri Lankans, to join us in this endeavour. At this historic juncture, tangible steps are taken in the interest of national unity and reconciliation among the people. In this context, a wide range of policy measures have been identified to be addressed expeditiously, including the establishment of a truth-seeking mechanism and a social justice commission. A new national security legislation replacing the PTA is at an advanced stage of being finalized. In order to engage in a mutually beneficial manner with Sri Lankan overseas in the national interest, an overseas Sri Lankan office is being established. A rapid development plan for the North and the East is being formulated to uplift the standard of living of the people in these areas as well as to improve economic growth. The President has called for the full implementation of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. In order to ensure that these processes progress effectively. A cabinet subcommittee on reconciliation has been appointed by the President.
We wish to recommend that Sri Lanka, 1, engages with all stakeholders in a participatory process to advance the country's ongoing process of reconciliation, and 2, strengthens measures to protect economic and social rights of all without discrimination, including social protection for vulnerable groups.
We are pleased to observe that Sri Lanka amended the Prevention of Terrorism Act and held an all-party conference to revive reconciliation process. While fully recognizing the economic and social challenges that Sri Lanka has been going through, Turkey recommends Sri Lanka to 1. Continue human rights education and capacity building programs to ensure strengthening investigative skills of prosecutors and police officers. 2. Effectively implement the cabinet-approved national policy on reconciliation and coexistence in Sri Lanka.
We appreciate their commitment to work with the international human rights mechanisms in order to promote the human rights system and its mechanisms at the national level. We also commend the steps they took to advance the path of national reconciliation.
We welcome Sri Lanka's commitments on respect for the rights of those from all religious and ethnic groups. Its recent efforts to foster political inclusion and constitutional reform are particularly welcome. We recommend that Sri Lanka allow all its communities freely to commemorate and memorialise victims of the Civil War, to repeal sections 365 and 365A of the Penal Code and end criminalisation of same-sex conduct.
We recognize steps taken in recent months to improve economic transparency and governance. However, we are concerned by reports of abuses by members of the security forces, the use of anti-terror legislation to detain human rights defenders, and the rise in corruption. We recommend that Sri Lanka, 1, replace the Prevention of Terrorism Act, cease arbitrary detentions for freedom of expression, and ensure legislation is aligned with international human rights standards. 2, ensure the rights of LGBTQI+ persons are respected, and take steps to end discrimination and harassment of the LGBTQI+ community, including by amending the Penal Code to decriminalize same-sex relations.
Canada recommends that Sri Lanka repeal the Prevention of Terrorism Act and ensure that any replacement legislation is compliant with Sri Lanka's international human rights obligations. Decriminalize same-sex relations by repealing sections 365 and 365A of the Penal Code. Promptly conduct independent and impartial investigations and prosecutions in all cases of human rights violations, including those perpetrated by law enforcement and military.
Now, the Gazette notification confirming the local government elections on the 9th of March has been published. Returning officers in the respective districts have issued the notice stating that in terms of subsection 38(1)(c) of the Local Authorities Elections Ordinance, elections will be contested in relation to the respective local authorities. It states that the poll for those authorities will be taken on March 9th from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Members of local government institutions need to be appointed by the 20th of March. Over 80,700 candidates will contest for 339 local government bodies on the 9th of March. Now, the Meteorology Department issued a red alert warning at 10 a.m. today, valid until 10 a.m. tomorrow. Accordingly, the depression over the southwest Bay of Bengal currently lays centered about 10 kilometers of southeast and southeast of Batticaloa. Today is likely to move east-west-southwestward and reach east coast of the island today. Thus, high-risk level red advisories for heavy rains have been issued in the districts of northern, north central, northwestern and eastern provinces. Heavy showers of about 150 millimeters are likely in the Trincomalee and Puttalam districts and the northern and north central provinces, while showers above 100 millimeters are expected in Kurunegala, Matale, Batticaloa and Ampara districts. Meanwhile, red alerts were also issued for strong winds across the northern, north central, northwestern and eastern and central provinces, with strong winds of about 50 to 60 kilometers per hour to be expected in these localities, and winds of roughly 40 to 50 kilometers per hour in other areas. People living in hilly areas, particularly those prone to landslides and low-lying areas in river basins, have been urged to be vigilant by the department. In the meantime, the department also warned that within the deep sea area of the southwest Bay of Bengal, wind speeds of roughly around 50 to 50 kilometers per hour are expected and are likely to increase up to 60 to 70 kilometers per hour. The department further warned that heavy showers and very rough seas can also be expected. Welcome back. Now, Sri Lanka has been ranked 101 in the 2022 Corruption Perceptions Index among 180 countries in the annual survey conducted by Transparency International. According to the latest report, Sri Lanka has scored 36 points from a total of 100. Commenting on this matter, Transparency International Sri Lanka's report said that Sri Lankan officials have made little to no progress in terms of resisting corruption coupled with suppression of civil society.
The latest Corruption Perceptions Index compiled by Transparency International was released yesterday. Sri Lanka's score in 2022 CPI stands at 36 out of 100 points, lower than the previous year's 37-point score. Sri Lanka's CPI score had remained static at 38 during the period.
Now, both the Public Utilities Commission and the Ceylon Teachers Union filed petitions before the Supreme Court seeking an order to be issued to the Ceylon Electricity Board to prevent the imposition of power cuts during the GCE Advanced Level examination period. Though the petitions filed by the petitioners pointed out that the power cuts during the examinations period has caused great inconvenience through the candidates.
The Public Utilities Commission filed a writ petition before the Supreme Court seeking an order to prevent the imposition of power cuts during the GCE Advanced Level examination. Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara and Secretary to the Ministry of Power and Energy have been named as the respondents of the petition. The petition states that although the Ceylon Electricity Board had agreed to provide an uninterrupted power supply during the LL examination period, the parents of the candidates have complained that the power cuts imposed are causing a great inconvenience. Meanwhile, the Ceylon Teachers Union also filed a petition before the Supreme Court naming the Power and Energy Secretary, the CEB Chairman, CPC Chairman and the Human Rights Commission as its respondents. The petitioners claim that although settlement was reached between the relevant parties before the HRCSL, that an uninterrupted supply of power will be provided during the period in which the 2022 GCA Advanced Level examination is being held. The relevant parties have failed to abide by the settlement, which in turn resulted to the violation of the basic fundamental rights of those students sitting for the examination. The petition further stated that the implementation of such power cuts have also caused a great disadvantage to the students. Through their petition, the CTU called for an order to be issued against the respondents preventing the implementation of power cuts during the period in which any national exams are being held. They also requested the Supreme Court that an investigation be conducted into this matter.
Meanwhile, the Public Utilities Commission said it will not approve any scheduled power cuts until the 17th of February in order to protect the rights of over 331,000 students sitting for the 2022 GC Advanced Level examinations. PUCSL Chairman Janaka Ratnayaka stated that such power cuts imposed during this period will be considered unauthorized and illegal. Earlier today, the CB requested the PUCSL permission to impose power cuts for 2 hours and 20 minutes today and tomorrow. The request was made upon consideration of the fact that the Water Management Secretariat has restricted the release of water from reservoirs for hydropower generations since the expected rainfall was not experienced. Now, the all share price index closed in green, gaining 84.96 as a result of price gains in counters such as Commercial Bank, Expo Lanka Holdings and Selinco Insurance. A similar behavior was witnessed in the S&P SL 20 as it closed 35.2 points higher at 2,799.53. High net worth and institutional investor participation was noted in John Keel's holdings. Mixed interest was observed in SoftLogic Life, Insurance, Lanka IOC and Expo Lanka Holdings, whilst retail interest was noted in SoftLogic Capital, Industrial Asphalts and SMB Leasing non-voting. Furthermore, foreign buyers closed as net buyers. The market saw a turnover of 1.5 billion rupees today, lower than the month's daily average of 1.8 billion rupees and nearly half of 2022's average turnover of 2.9 billion rupees. The bourse saw a flow of net foreign inflow of 45 million rupees, extending the net offshore buying to 1.9 billion so far this year. Now let's take a look at how the Sri Lankan rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. The Federal Reserve is expected to raise its target interest rates by a quarter of a percentage point, setting aside the rapid hikes used last year to curb a surge in inflation in favor of a more steep hunt for stopping point. The expected increase would set the US Central Bank's benchmark overnight interest rates in the 4.50 to 4.75 range, the highest since November 2017.
The rate-setting Federal Open Market Committee is due to release its policy statement at 900 GMT. Fed Chair Jerome Powell is scheduled to hold a news conference half an hour later to elaborate on the decision. Caught flat-footed last year as inflation accelerated and threatened to prove far more persistent than anticipated. The Fed approved the fastest interest rate hikes since the 1980s. Starting with a quarter percentage point increase in March, the central bank by the summer was raising rates in increments of 3/4 of a percentage point and moved the target policy rate up by 4.25 percentage points in just 10 months. It delivered a half percentage point hike in its December 13 to 14 policy meeting. The impact of the policy move seems to be gaining steam. New data last week showed a key inflation measure slowed faster than expected in December, continuing a 6-month downward trend. But the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, the Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index, still rose at a 5% annual rate in December, down from a June high of nearly 7%, but still more than double the central bank's 2% inflation target. Policymakers are adamant that they will not make what they consider to be a crucial error of pausing further rate hikes until they are convinced inflation is on durable path back to the 2% goal.
And that's all the news we have for you this evening. Join us again tomorrow for the very latest news at the very same time. Tune into our social media pages for the latest updates. Have a pleasant evening and good night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.